Hello, welcome to my very first YouTube video here on my channel. It's a art turtle. Here I am today. I'm drawing a character that I created sort of from my imagination. It was a little bit inspired, but this is a Valentine's Day witch that I decided to draw. I know it's a little late. I drew this back in January. It's been a little bit of a while trying to figure out how to do everything. But yeah, better late than never. So this is a character that I came up with after watching a Snapchat story of a British makeover show where they had a little British lady that had really poofy hair, and so she wanted it to be more manageable, and they made it more manageable for her, and they also dyed it pink. So then I was inspired by how her hair looked originally with the pink, with the after makeover pink hair that they gave her. So then I decided to combine the pink hair and the fluffy hair into pink fluffy hair. And I came up with a whole character named creatively Valerie Valentine. And here she is. I feel, just to talk a little bit on my drawing style. My drawing style I feel a little bit different. I haven't seen other creators do this necessarily, where they just draw a body. They usually use shapes and lines to help build a frame, and then they build the body around that. I'm different in that aspect because I I just use what I know about proportions, and I just draw it out until it feels right. Like I did with the legs, I realized, oh, I didn't draw that out right, so then I'm like, okay, let's try and make this a little bit more proportional. And there definitely is like stuff I need to do to help improve that, and hopefully one day I'll be able to do that to improve it all nicely. But yeah, this is just how I draw characters for now. I just draw a straight up body. Faces are a little bit harder for me. If I don't have it directly in my head, I could take forever trying to come up with a face, because then I kind of have a problem of making faces all look a little similar. And so I tried my best to try and make her different compared to my other characters. And yeah. And what kind of happened with her is I had a vision in my head of how I wanted her to look, but then it just wouldn't translate to paper necessarily the way I wanted to, because then after I put it on paper, I'm like, it could be better. And so it would turn into me getting mad in an area, and then going on to a different area, working on that, coming back to that area, erasing it, drawing it again, going back to another area, erasing or drawing that area out, going back to that area I was at, and then erasing it, and then drawing it out until I like it, which kind of happened with the arm and the legs, and a lot with the face. And so with the legs, I finally decided they weren't working the way I wanted to, so then I came up with this, where she's standing on one foot with a leg going up and to the side, but then I realized, oh no, later on I'll realize that the leg does not look proper, because nobody has their leg just going off into another dimension like that. And so yeah, I'll get back to that, but I kind of decided an idea to give her for tights, because I love giving my witch character tights, but then I gave her stripes, and another character of mine has stripes. But as you can see, I fixed a leg here, and I fixed it to the point where it's more not flying off of her body. I put it more within reason of it just going behind her a little bit and then just away. So I feel like I did that a little bit more proportionally, and here I am giving her tights. They're definitely not the most favorite tights I've given a character, but I was kind of just uninspired with the tights, and I just drew what I felt would be okay, like hearts and circles, but it's okay. And then here I am, I drew her arm out properly, because then in my little lore for her, it's her hat is attached to her hair, and she wouldn't need to hold on to it. So then I decided, hey, she's a Valentine's Day witch, basically like a little Cupid, and I did it so that way she was looking out for lovers. And yeah, so that worked better. And then I think I finally got the eyes down, and I have my little panda pouches that I threw onto the table so elegantly. In the panda head, I have my markers that I used to line artwork with. I used to go from pencil straight to micron markers, and not markers, micron liners. And that was a little bit of a mistake because no matter how long I would let the microns dry for, the Ohuhu markers I would start coloring it in, and then no matter how dry the microns were, they would start to bleed. And so I was watching Happy Charms, and then I realized, hey, I could line my characters in colors with what I'm going to draw color in that area with, and then I could line the artwork later with microns if I want to. And then since then, that has worked out perfectly. And if I ever had an area that I was unsure about, I would just color it in with gray, and then just as a placeholder color, that way it wasn't just blank. Like I did with the shirt, I wasn't sure what I wanted it to be, so I colored it in with gray. But yeah, so I'm just finishing up on the little details on the tights. Very, very wonderful tights. And then I erased all the pencil from I realized I forgot the waistband in a few areas, but then I start erasing all of the pencil lines. And then I'm just left with a little coloring page, essentially. And I realized I forgot something else, and then I take out my Oohoo color sheets, and then I come up with the colors that I want to color with, and usually whenever I color in a character, I choose a base color, a first shadow, and then a secondary shadow, and then if I need any more shading from there, I would just choose whatever dark color I would need, and then I would just color it in as needed. And so here I am adding a little bit of shadow and texture to her hair by giving a little bit of squiggles here and there, and I decided it would be I tried my best to try and recreate a pretty pink pastel hair, and I know it goes on a bit saturated and you gotta let it dry out, but I think otherwise it turned out very well once it all dries out, because then it does, like, the shadow helps make it even better, because then at some points you're like, oh no, is this way too dark? But yeah, usually you just have to let it like dry out a bit and blend it out, and then it will all work. There is sometimes when using markers that I get lucky enough, and even somebody else might even get lucky enough, that when you're layering shadows, it just looks like a perfect watercolor, and you just never want to change it up. And it's happened to me a few times in my drawings, and I just look back at them and I'm like, wow, such a pretty watercolor effect I did indirectly without realizing. And so here I am using my basic white character skin coloring setup that I use, I guess. It is pastel peach as the base, and then I use barely beige for the shadows, the first shadows, and then depending on if I want the character to be paler, a little bit tan, or olive, I will choose an according third shading color. But yeah, so I did the skin tone, and then I'm going in with a pink marker to color in the shoes, shirt and shoes, because in my mind I wanted it to be the shirt and shoes match, but then the hat and skirt match as well, but the hair on its own, it is just its own color and nothing else matches the hair, because I wanted the hair to stand out as just a standalone thing that doesn't match necessarily with another item on her body. I wanted it to be its own entity. And so I feel like I used a little bit too dark of a pink on the shirt and shoes, but then I realized it'll be okay if I blend it out enough. And so here I am. I decided, well, I was looking at my markers and then I realized, oh darn, I don't have that many pastel pinks that would necessarily work for this drawing. So then I decided, hey, let's get a little bit of pastel purples in there and it should be pretty okay. And then so I did that, and okay, I'm coloring it in. I realized I look at this and I'm like, darn, I forgot the waistband, but I'll color it in. And I'm adding some shadow. I try my best to try and follow a shadow pattern because I know that's something that needs to be done in art, is following the way the light will hit a character, and sometimes I have it in mind and I can do it pretty okay, but shadows sometimes just evade me and I don't understand it properly. But yeah, I with the skirt, I was trying to get it to look like a tulle skirt, like it's made out of tulle with like a opaque fabric underneath, but then I don't know. I don't know. Texture is harder for me to try and convey through markers, I realized. A few things it's kind of easy with, but the texture of clothing is a little bit lost when it comes to markers, I feel like. At least for me, because I try my best to try and give it proper, like, proper shading and stuff to help it look realistic, but it's something I need to work on. And so here I am. I just took a color that was kind of dark, because then I realized, hey, it's not, well, this character Valerie is not as shaded as I was hoping for. So then I took a gray and I just started putting it everywhere. And I gave her blush, and then I started blending that all out, and then now she looks like a tan little monster, and I don't like it. A little orange little monster. And so I gave up on that, because then I'm like, darn, I ruined her. And so I went on to giving a little bit of contrast to her by coloring in all the hearts with a dark red color, just to help make it look less like less of a blob of just pastels. An amalgamous blob of pastels. So I color it in, and then I used a color for the tights. The tights definitely are not my most favorite that I've done for characters. Definitely they're a little bit sad, and I'm very sad I didn't take more care into them. But this was like almost 3 hours of drawing that I managed to squeeze down into 16 minutes. And so yeah, I feel like I gave myself a little bit of a pass with the tights, but the shading isn't bad on them. And here I am in my Pantastic pouch. I take out my microns where I hide them. And so I'm lining my drawing, and usually what I like to do is, I did this the most with the hair, is I break up the lines to give it not a complete line across, just to help, I guess, I don't know what the word would be, but it just helps show that it's more of a light effect, where you don't give it a solid black line like I am with the shirt and stuff. But I did that with the hair. I break it up. I do like some dots just to help make it look nice. And then one thing that helps me with drawing my characters is the one little seam on the shirt underneath the arm that's sticking out. That seam always helps me line up the body with the side, because then usually when you're on paper, it's like, okay, you want to draw somebody that's slightly angled, and then you're like, okay, where does the body start to round? And so adding that little seam helps me figure out where the body is starting to round, and where the seam of the shirt meets up, and where the shirt starts to curve around the body, if that makes sense. So yeah, little details like that I've learned over the years that helps me with my art. And so here I am. I'm just lining all the artwork that I've done. I do something odd with my lining, where I mess up accidentally on some of my lines, and so I end up making something like extremely thick when it comes to line art. And you'll see it later on, like up at the top of the hat. I'm like, oh darn, I started messing up. All the lines were a little bit janky, so then I gave it a bit of a thicker line. And then it kind of happened there. Definitely with the side seams of the, yeah, see right here. There we go. Look at that crescent moon right there. And so yeah, but then again, it's also a kind of a stylistic thing I do, where I just make thick lines on angles, and it just, ooh, I like that. Like the way that the skirt has edges that swoop out, that's kind of a stylistic thing I do whenever I line my artworks indirectly. um and so yeah, I just color in the legs. I refused to color in the tights with anymore, and yep, there we go, I messed up again. I think I realized I made a line with the line markers when I originally lining the artwork, and I made a line that was way too low, and so I just colored it in and give it a bit of a heavier shadow. And then so yeah, that's what I do. And I decided, I never do this with my characters, but then I decided to give her a little bit of a heart trail. I wanted it to be like, okay, she's stepping in a puddle of hearts, and then hearts are flying up behind her, hence why I gave her that shadow puddle. But anyway, I thought just to add some dynamic to it, I would, asymmetricalness, I guess. I would add hearts on the other side, or symmetricalness, I don't know. It's been a while since I looked at my art terms. But yeah, so I drew some hearts on that side, and now I'm going in with my Jelly Roll pen, and usually the Jelly Roll can make or break an artwork for me, which is a little sad. I usually go a little bit too heavy with the Jelly Roll, but I think I did pretty okay this time. I used the Jelly Roll sparingly. I used it in the hair to help add a little bit of highlights, and I like what I did. And I kind of regret the amount of highlight I put on that heart on the skirt, but it's okay. And then I signed away my soul, and this was the artwork. So thank you for joining me on my very first video here on YouTube. I am hoping that I could be able to draw more for you guys. I have a few videos in mind, but I go to school part-time and I work full-time, so I do my best to fit everything into my little chaotic schedule. And so yeah, I will hopefully be able to show you guys more of my artworks, and hopefully I can be able to grow more as an artist through this. So yes, thank you for joining me on my first video, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye!